Hello, divine beings. Now we're up to chapter 3 from my book, Journey from the Ego to the Heart Center. And this chapter is called Rise of the Alter Ego and Escapism. Now, if you're wondering why I have a headscarf and red lipstick and Miss Lady Salsa on this necklace, this is now showing who I was back in 2014 when I started to go through a transformation. So in chapter 2, I talked about the grief of my mother's passing. And this section of the book, the first 3 chapters, I talk about being stuck in the matrix of the 3rd dimension of consciousness. So what was happening to me, I had gone through the spiritual death of the ego, and now I was looking for escapism. And I was looking at who did I want to become. And after 12 months of grieving, I looked at my wardrobe and I said, I'm over this. I'm over this wardrobe that is plain and boring and mumsy, and I just want a new persona. And this is how the birth of this look came about. I've always loved mid-century fashion since I was a teen. The 1950s, Marilyn Monroe, the black and white movies, the hourglass figures, and I just said, that's it. I want to personify that elegance, the beauty, the colors, the frocks. I wanted to be it. And I remember buying clothes, retro, vintage, midi dresses, getting my hair in headscarves, learning to do pin-up curls, full makeup, red lipstick. Like I was a walking doll. To and from work, I would dress like this. And I loved it. And now I look back and I realize that's the rise of my alter ego. Miss Lady Salsa was this alter ego who expressed herself in creativity. She was designing playsuits. Ava and Rose was birthed from that. And I just loved it. I loved meeting all these eclectic people who didn't follow mainstream. And that's what I was doing. I didn't want to follow mainstream. I wanted to be a retro mum. And I had the classic 1950s home. So I had the vintage furniture, the decor. I was down packed, full vintage. And I loved it because when I look at the fashion of that day, it was feminine and it was just so beautiful. It's like a walking art form. People would just smile at me because I'm just art expressing itself through dress, through style, through fashion. And when I look back on that retro mum era, which lasted about 2-3 years, even though I enjoyed it, there was still a part of me that wasn't happy, because once the makeup came off in the night, I'm still the mum that has to deal with grief and the post-trauma and getting on with life. You know, like it's one thing to design things and start a socials page where you're expressing yourself in your fullest, but there's also the other side, the shadow side, the shade, where life is just mundane. And so for me, that made life enjoyable at that time. And I was kicking goals. Like I had a fashion catwalk done. I had some models display my designs at the Love Vintage show for 2014. I got into a magazine. Like I was just manifesting all these amazing things because I was so in tune with what I wanted and a vibrational match to receive it. So I was kicking goals. I was really, really, really happy. But there was also a dark side because at night I still had to deal with feelings that I had been suppressing for a very long time. And I could see I was starting to get triggered. I still had a lot of work to do. There was still a lot of anger in me, pent up from the 2012, the grief. So this chapter is when I discovered that Dr. Shafali came into my life. Probably around that time, I started to see videos about conscious parenting, and I started to learn about the concept that we need to reparent ourselves and soothe that inner little girl in me that was screaming for her mummy, was crying for her mother, because I was using that belief that I'm a motherless daughter and it's not fair, and I was coming from that place of lack, not realizing that I'm not in lack. I just have to find a new mindset of how I navigate this new landscape without her. Okay, so this chapter I go really into what is this style of parenting. I wasn't raised on that model. It's very new. It's outside my culture. So I really had to look at, well, how can I make this work? Because I don't want to be this projecting mother that keeps getting triggered by my children. I need to grow up into the adult version of myself, and I need to set the example. So it was an interesting time. And I do say that as a conscious parent, sometimes it can be quite challenging because you're working on your old belief systems and trying to sort of say, well, that's not true for me anymore. This is how we're going to navigate when this happens, when there's conflict. This is how I will deal with it. And it's about self-regulation. It's about making sure that you're not projecting your limiting beliefs onto your child. Okay, so there's a section that I say in this one. Let me just find it. I think this is the one I want to read. So my firstborn son was compliant and rarely challenged my parenting skills. However, my second-born daughter was a force to be reckoned with. She brought me to my knees and made me look inward, witness my immaturity, and take action to grow up whenever we came head to head with a challenge. As she gets older, she will call me out if I behave like an unconscious parent. And this was a turning point of moving towards becoming a conscious parent. I am forever grateful that my children took me off my egoic pedestal. As a conscious parent, I want to observe my flaws as their mother, try to do better, be better, and act better. My children have played a pivotal role in guiding me to come back to my heart center and align with my moral compass and parenting values by working on healing my inner childhood wounds and trauma. Most parents may disagree with my unorthodox style of mindful parenting. However, I know this has been the greatest gift of parenting, to let go of my limiting beliefs and trust the journey that I can be both the teacher and student in my relationship with my children. It's a very powerful chapter, and what I will say is that throughout this book, I've done something very different to what most authors will do. I've actually added QR codes on very key, significant events or moments that I felt when I watched that video, it changed my life. And now I'm inviting you as the reader to scan over it and explore this topic that I went down. On this particular chapter though, I have shared a copy of the Ava and Rose Love Vintage Fashion Parade, because it's that moment in time where I don't think I'll ever go back to designing and creating, but that was 2014, 11 years ago. And this is what it was. And it feels weird sometimes when I put this face on, because I'm no longer that person. She's not really a part of me. But when I need her to come out, she's very confident, she's effervescent, she's joyful, she's full of life. And I love that part of her. But I don't need to be her every day. I only pull her out when I need to. But I know that was a fun time. The dressing up, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it was also when I witnessed I had a lot of work to do. So that is chapter 3. It's when you can witness your ego and make that decision to let go of it and step into your heart center. So that's it. It's about trusting and respecting that you can connect to the essence and your heart and your soul to live out your best life and the best version of yourself. So that's chapter 3 from my book, Journey from the Ego to the Heart Center.